This week on Board to be Wild, local is lekker with ancient terrible things.
We'll be rolling dice and playing nice, apparently.
I don't think we'll be playing nice at all. I played against... no. Ancient terrible things on Board to be Wild. Welcome to Board to be Wild from Zarnia, Games and Geekery. I'm John Keevy and this is...
Adil Patel, board game guru.
77. Let's just be specific. There's some other board game gurus out there, but you are the only 77 one, right?
I am, indeed.
Okay. Alright, so let's get into it. The game we're discussing today is Ancient Terrible Things, am I right?
That's right.
What's it all about?
It's one of the most successful games from South Africa. It is essentially a pulp horror game. So you're traveling down the dark river through the jungles, and you're trying to take on these different encounters along the way. So it's sort of an adventure game, and it's dice driven with a bunch of cards and some really great artwork.
Okay, so it feels to me like Indiana Jones with the nightmare factor, like, you know, pushed up a little bit.
Exactly, and a little bit of Cthulhu thrown in for good measure.
A little bit of Heart of Darkness.
Yeah,
you know, the river journey, the Amazon, the mysterious. So it's that whole kind of tradition of like pulp, right?
Absolutely.
And all the encounters that it's built up from speak to that genre. Am I right? Steamboats, gun sloops, Walking Dead.
Yeah, it's got some really cool ideas and really some cool tropes in there. So things that we're probably familiar with through, you know, various movies, as you were saying, Indiana Jones, that kind of thing. But also introducing a little bit of a twist on some of those as well.
Mm-hmm. So it feels like, just looking at the design, that this game wants me to feel excitement, wants me to like play a bit of a gambler and be a little bit and have a lot of tension in the game. Is that right?
Absolutely, and it's a dice chucker at heart. So there is that luck factor that comes in, but also uses some Euro mechanics of worker placement, some hand management as well, trying to understand how you're going to use some of your feat cards, etc.
Okay, I mean, that makes it sound like there's like a lot going on and it's quite a complicated game. Is that...
No, it's not that complicated. And so that's one of the things that I like about it, is that you can introduce it relatively quickly. So it's quite a quick teach, but it's also something that you can play relatively quickly. There are two modes. You can play in a very short version, or you can also play a longer version, which you can regulate using the encounter card. So the number of encounters that you'll come up against during the course of the game. But from a teaching perspective, it's actually pretty simple. You move from the riverboat onto one of the encounters. You take some actions there. So there you might pick up some of the resources, you might get a specific action, and then you try to roll a specific combination using the 5 dice that you have in your dice pool, and potentially some of the extra dice that you could pick up.
If you get some special powers going on there.
Correct.
Yeah, I suppose also the thing that makes it a lot easier is that the board and the explainers are all really clear about what the goals are, what you have to achieve, your turn sequence and all of that. Each card, they've got it right there, the combinations that you need to get to defeat, in this case, the vile swarm. Disgusting.
Yeah, I think the iconography is really good, so it helps. You don't have to really go back to the rule book very much. Also, one of the things that's quite useful is that they've got 2 scenarios that you can play. So depending on which of the scenarios you choose at the start of the game, you're then going to get different resources for the leftover dice. So this is one thing that I think is quite unique to this game, is that when you take on a particular encounter, you may assign certain dice to taking on that encounter, but then anything left over could give you some extra resources.
Okay, brilliant.
So none of your dice, potentially none of your dice are going to be wasted.
All right. looking at all the cards, everything feels very unique, and there's multiple scenarios. Are there any duplicates in this game?
No, there aren't, which is also quite a unique thing. So every card that's in your feat deck, every card that's in the encounter deck, all the ones in the swag, they're all completely unique. So they're all different artwork, different effects. And that's quite a big task for someone designing a game like this, or first of all, but then also putting it together. So in terms of artwork, that's a lot of art that's gone into making this game.
Okay, so what you're telling me is that this is all about luck.
I'm not telling you that at all. It's completely strategic.
Okay. Or somewhere in the middle.
Of course. So there is some strategy, building up your courage or trying for certain of the encounters that might fit with your strategy are going to be useful. And there are these achievements down the bottom which allow you to get some extra points for set collection. So you might collect certain kinds of encounters and that gives you some extra points.
All right, wait. We keep on talking about points. How do you win this game?
Well, you win by getting the most of these points, which you can get from the encounters, from some of the achievements, from even some of your swag cards. So some of the items.
It's a victory point game that you get it all up at the end.
Correct. And then there are some of these terrible thing tokens which can take away some of your points. So you've got to watch out for that. If you fail an encounter, you get one of those.
Are you telling me that it's bad to unleash ancient horrors on the world?
I am telling you that. Okay. You certainly don't want those ancient terrible things coming up for you.
There go my weekend plans. All right, so who's this game for? Who would enjoy this game?
I think if you've played games like
I've played games.
Catan or some of the games that get you into the hobby, things like Stone Age, which is a worker placement game, then you'll be familiar with some of the mechanics in this. And if you're looking for something a little bit different, so slightly different theme, slightly different way of playing, and actually a bit more dice driven, then this is the kind of game that you would enjoy.
What I liked about this game was kind of like the competitive elements of it, and that it had a nice balance of strategy and luck. So you could build your strategy and try to achieve something, but at the end of the day, the dice are the ones that are going to tell you if you win or not.
Yeah, it is a dice chucker. So at the end of the day, as you say, it's going to depend largely. Your success is going to depend on rolling well. So there are lots of ways to mitigate. So you can spend your focus tokens to re-roll. It is a Yahtzee style game, so that means that you can re-roll all or some of your dice during your turn. So
depending
you would
on
get
the resources.
Correct, and so you get up to 2 re-rolls, and you can re-roll all your dice at once if you want, and you can do that for free.
All right.
So there are ways to mitigate, but ultimately you are trying to roll certain combinations, and there is going to be a fair amount of luck involved for that.
And how many players?
So you can play with 2 to 4 players, and with the expansion you can play with 5 players. I have found it to be a really good 2-player game, which, a lot of the Euro games that you get that are made for 4 players, you can play them at 2, but they're not always that great at 2. This is a really good 2-player game, and it's a lot of back and forth, and it's quite tense. So I think it's a great 2-player game, works really well at 3 and 4 as well.
Okay, and yeah, good fun?
Absolutely good fun, and you can, if you're wanting to play it at a very quick sort of clip and you're going to play in a sort of half an hour, 40 minutes game, you can do the short version, or if you want a slightly longer, you can also scale it up with using these encounter cards.
Okay, they've got like a mechanism for scaling and just making things easier or prolonging it?
Correct, yeah. So all of that. And I think that the dice element of it really makes it quite fun. It makes it quite tense. There are moments when you're trying for a specific combination, and whether you hit it or miss it is not predetermined. So I think that that is what brings a lot of the fun in the game. For me, the artwork, the mechanics, the dice rolling all comes together in a really good package.
I'll tell you another thing that made it fun for like 2 players was there's not a lot of trying to like screw over the other player. It's basically a race. There are some elements of that where you can kind of like poke at each other, but you can't really stump and mess someone else up in this game.
True. I mean, the take that element, there is some take that, but there's not that much. So there's
take that. I like that term. It's a good term.
It is a good
the
term.
Take that element.
Yeah, so it's like I could, and literally in this game, when you go to the Sinister Chateau, you can take that. You can take one of his tokens, but that's about it. So there's not a lot of that kind of player interaction where I can stop you from finishing an encounter or that kind of thing. So there's a little bit, but and just enough to make it so that I am paying attention to what you're doing, but not enough to make it feel like you're being attacked.
The strategy affects the other person, but it doesn't necessarily sabotage the other person.
Exactly.
So that's Ancient Terrible Things, available online at the what's the store?
Pleasant Company Games.
Pleasant Company Games, a South African game. It is great fun, excellent for 2 players or more, unique and replayable endlessly. Especially if you want to crush your enemies or awaken ancient and terrible things. All right, so this has been Bored to be Wild. I'm John Keevy.
I'm Adil Patel.
Brought to you by Zarnia for games and geekery. Like, subscribe, or we will unleash the ancient terrible things. What are you doing? This is a game without that. We're not having that element.
I'm the ancient terrible thing.
No, you don't look 77.